I can start with the Hobart Standing for Women or Let Women Speak event. Ours wasn't quite like the New Zealand one, but for us it was still actually quite shocking. So just a quick overview of what happened there. In the lead up to the event, we had some women organising, the sound equipment and security and the event itself. The day before the event, the Equality Tasmania called for it to be cancelled on the grounds that we were transphobic, I suppose, and we were coming 2 days after the Melbourne event, where, as we all know, what happened there with the Nazi salute, and then there was also the trans activists that were, having to be held back by police on horseback, which was pretty horrendous to watch. So we were all kind of very worried about the event anyway, and then we had Equality Tasmania trying to cancel us. So there was lots and lots of emailing and phone calls and whatever to the Speaker of the House, because the event was held at the Parliament House Gardens in Hobart. In the end, they came through and said that we could hold the event, but it took quite a while. Then within those sort of 2 days before the event as well, and the day before, we had problems with security once again pulling out of the event. The same thing had happened at the Gender Identity in Law Forum that was held in Hobart at the Hobart Town Hall. Security kept pulling out, and we were told that in some cases it was because they were being leaned on, basically, to not take on the event as so same thing happened in Hobart. We had the security pull out, which of course left us in a fairly dire position, and then also the audio equipment people also pulled out. I think it was the morning of the event, because as it happened on the morning of the event, as Kelly J was flying into Tasmania, the Mercury had a whole article about it with the Nazi salute in the Mercury newspaper, calling us all Nazis. So then anybody who had been involved was obviously frightened that they were going to be associated with an event that was, transphobic and Nazi. So the audio equipment also pulled out. So anyway, some last-ditch workings by the person who was running it, managed to get some security, and we also ended up getting some audio equipment, so the event went ahead. I don't know if you've all seen the event live streamed, but as you can see, it was terrible right from the beginning. We had a permit. Equality Tasmania also gained a permit to protest our event. They were supposed to stay in a quadrant of the gardens, but pretty much as soon as Kelly J arrived, they all just started moving over towards the area that we were in, and then that was it. The police never managed to hold them back properly. We ended up having to pull back to the Parliament House itself, hoping that the few police that were there would actually hold the crowd, but they didn't. And then as the event went on, I think we ended up with, in the end, I think there may have been about 10 police holding back this huge crowd of horrendous sort of screaming, spitting, zombies basically. And, we were all corralled up against the building with nowhere to go. Anyway, the event went on, and as you can see by some of the photos, at the end, Kelly J had to make a bit of a fast getaway because it was just getting out of control. That was on the front page of the Australian. Is there anything you'd want to add there, Isla?
Yes, I would add that the Hobart counter-protest was the most violent protest we've seen in recent Tasmanian history. It was a media feeding frenzy. Media sort of were literally behaving like frenzied bloodhounds. Fortunately, there were two good journalists who attended the event, and we got reasonably fair reportage from one in the Examiner. In the middle of the event, lots of women contacted Tasmania Police from, I think, the mainland, from Tasmania, and even internationally. I contacted the Minister's office halfway into the event and asked the electoral officer there to contact the Minister and get the Minister to instruct the Police Commissioner to take immediate action to protect women. Of course, nothing actually happened. I put out a media release in the middle of the event, basically condemning the government's inaction and that we'd called on the Minister to act. We had a very biased reportage in the Mercury the next day, even though there was a small clip from my media release, which was somewhat of a miracle. The ABC reportage of the event was totally dumbed down and deceptive. They said that this was a peaceful event. It was not peaceful. They also muted the sounds. I think it took many people who attended the protest, it took them about a month to recover from it. Some people said that the noise amounted to noise assault because the screaming was so loud. It really impacted on people physically. It was palpable. I think it also needs to be noted that the major leader in the protest who forged her way right to the front of the event and within less than a metre of Kelly J was Greens leader Cassie O'Connor. And if those people who've actually seen the footage of the event, you will see that the hatred that the Greens leader is visible in her whole actions and her words on the day was just astonishing. I think what's really unfortunate was that there were politicians who actually witnessed what happened to all of us. They stood on the second floor of the Parliament House building watching what was happening to us. Nobody intervened. Quality Tasmania, after the event, particularly Martine Delaney, it's known that Martine's a trans rights activist here, that the statement coming from Martine was that it was considered to be unfortunate, the level of the opposition and not the violence per se, but that it was completely out of order, the behaviour of many people, because Equality Tasmania had envisaged that it would be a peaceful vigil. But at no time did anybody from Equality Tasmania, and later on when they were written to about this, did they publicly condemn the actions of those there on the day. There were people being spat on. Police did interview one person who had been spat on. A journalist actually interviewed the same person. We put photos of that. One person was pushed over. I had defamation threats from a former or current government bureaucrat, and another person was threatened that they would get their head bashed in. So at the end of it, we called for the Premier to conduct an inquiry into events leading up to and during the event. We have still not received a reply from the Premier of Tasmania to that request. Over to you, Lynne.
Yeah. Yes, and I'd just like to say that also in the lead up to that, Cassie O'Connor had put some fairly vile things on her Twitter account, all the Nazi stuff, and in the end had to take it down because she was she had a rabbi from the UK basically get on to her and say that, you know, this was just not on. But I noticed that she's back up on Twitter now, so you know, they've just got away with it. Basically, there was actually politicians there revving up the crowd and getting them to attack what really were, you know, middle-aged and older women. It was just insane, and some of the people there were like, you know, 18-year-old, 25-year-old boys. Just yeah. It was terrible.
I'd just like to add here, Lynne, on Martine Delaney's Facebook page after the event, Martine wrote this, and I think this is really extraordinary and indicative of the sort of paranoia that a lot of TRAs have. Martine wrote this: around the world, KJ Parker's friends and allies, groups like Women Speak Tasmania, often organise speaking events, meetings, in ways and places that ensure they'll be deplatformed, cancelled before they occur, or held down by protesters when they happen. Coincidence? Bad luck or bad management? No, I don't think so. It's deliberate. That's Martine Delaney, key trans rights activist in Tasmania.
So blaming women for the actions of trans activists.
Yeah. Darvo, classic Darvo.
Well, I go on to the advocate. We've got some, in Tasmania, there's the Mercury, the Advocate and the Examiner. They're the sort of three main newspapers. They're all completely captured. And we had an event, I don't remember when it was now, it's a few months ago now. We protested outside the Advocate, which is in Burnie, because the editor of the Advocate had written a opinion piece, which was just unbelievable, calling women bigoted transphobes for not wanting to have men in their changing rooms, among other things. But it was just insane, really. So we did a protest action there. Anything you want to add to that, Isla?
No, not really. I'll move on to the schools campaign shortly when you're ready.
Yeah. So we've got a completely biased media here. There's really no way that we can get any of our side out to the public. The ABC obviously are completely biased, and especially ABC Radio here in Tasmania has got a couple of presenters who are just total, I mean, we might as well just call them trans activists. They're actually that belligerent when it comes to, you know, putting up any of the other side. Actually, and I will mention that there were a number of women who rang ABC Hobart in the day, I think it was the day after the Kelly J event, because there was just so many women who were just stunned and shocked at what had happened. And Rick Goddard, is that his name, Isla? Wouldn't take their calls. They wouldn't take any of these women's calls. They just said, no, we're not going to talk about that today. So that was how they got around not having to discuss the disgusting, you know, thing that we saw with the trans activists and the whole mobbing of the women. They just basically just bluntly said, we're not going to talk about it. So, and that was ABC Hobart. So, yeah, it's an uphill battle here. Another event that we did was there was a drag queen story time held at the Launceston Library, and there's another group here in Tasmania called LGB Tasmania, which is Jessica Hoyle. Jessica Hoyle organised this particular event. I myself went along to that one, and we basically protested that on the, saying that we thought that it was, it doesn't meet safeguarding standards for children, having drag queens read stories about with gender identity themes to children. And once again, there were 2 people from the Examiner. There were 3 people turned up from ABC in Launceston. And when I asked them for an interview, this is the ABC, they said that they were only there observing. They weren't there to report, which is just unbelievable. The Examiner did take a statement from me, from Jessica Hoyle, and then obviously from the Drag Queen Storytime crowd. None of what I said even got into the interview. That was completely left out. Jessica got a few things in, and then the rest of it was just a hit job on anybody who dared to protest the event. But we'll keep trying if there's another one. But that's that. And then I actually run a Facebook group called, it's now called Safeguarding Children in Schools Australia. But the page itself is mainly about the impacts of gender ideology in schools. And we've just got more and more people joining. We've got more people just sort of in general in the community speaking out about the sorts of things that their kids are being taught in schools. And I think slowly the public is suddenly starting to catch on about what's happening. But one of the things I can say that at least here in Tasmania is that I do know of at least one school that had a group called Working It Out come in to teach inclusion and diversity training. And there was a letter that went home to parents, and in that letter there was nothing about gender identity, anything to do with sexuality. I don't even think it mentioned LGBT plus stuff. All it was that it was going to be inclusion and diversity training and stuff to do with anti-bullying. And, my son got to hear from the classmates who had attended that what that actual was about, and there was a whole busload of very, very, very angry children who were just, I think, in a state of shock at having had this class where they were taught all about these different sexualities that they'd obviously never heard about, and then we all know what the gender identity stuff is. When parents aren't even being told that their children are going to be taught this, there's no way that they can even, say anything about it. They can't even reject it or ask for their child not to attend because they didn't even know that it was going to happen in the first place. So this is also another issue with the way they're rolling out this training that most parents don't even know. In the case of one of my son's friends, his mother didn't even know that he'd even attended the class or anything until I rang her to find out some information. And then when she questioned him, she got told all of the stuff that they'd been told, but otherwise she wouldn't have even known because the form she'd signed had mentioned nothing. So it's worth anybody in Australia or even New Zealand knowing that that's another way that this is happening, that most parents are completely oblivious to any of this happening. Anything you want to say about that, Isla?
I'd just like to fast forward a bit, Lynn, to keep the working it out, diversity and inclusion training's been rolled out in schools over the last 2 years to teachers and to parents and friends. But especially since Posey Parker was here, Kelly J was here, we've had a massive influx of people who've come to join to work on this with us. And we've gone ahead in leaps and bounds. At the moment, we are rolling out this report here. I'll show it to you. I don't know whether you can see this. Now, this report is from the UK. It's called Asleep at the Wheel, an examination of gender and safeguarding in schools, with a foreword by Rosie Duffield, produced by the Policy Exchange. This is currently being delivered to Tasmanian principals across the state. All public and independent schools are going to get a copy of this. And Safeguarding Children in Schools Australia is our representative for this campaign is Jeff Briscoe. He's a teacher, currently teaching in Hobart. He's also a former alderman on Hobart City Council. So we're fighting back in a big way. So we want to inform principals and teachers and the Principals Association and the Education Department that parents are not happy. They're not happy about what's being done in schools with these inclusion and diversity programs. They're very aware of social contagion, and they want to alert schools to their duty of care to ensure safe conditions for students. So this is a major step forward. What's important about Tasmania in terms of Australian states is we're a very small state here. We're a fairly conservative population, rural population mainly, and many here view that we have got the best chance of winding back these regressive gender identity laws in Tasmania as the first run off the first cab off the rank. Much more difficult in the bigger states. We're still facing anti-conversion legislation, which is yet to be, a bill is yet to be tabled in Parliament. So we've still got that to deal with. We are hoping that this document will have some impact on principals and educators, and that they'll start to speak out about this, because the anti-conversion legislation is likely to impact on how schools deal with young people with gender dysphoria. I'd also like to add that in the last few months we've had a councillor in Hobart, Councillor Louise Elliott, who's come out on our side in a very big way in relation to facilities, council facilities, toilets, change rooms, etc. She's now under fire. She's had a complaint sent to our Anti-Discrimination Commission here. It's called Equal Opportunity Tasmania. A complaint about the fact that she spoke at the Kelly J event, and that during her talk she made this statement: transgender women are men. So she's been hauled before the Anti-Discrimination Commission. She's constantly being attacked, vilified, and she's mounting an excellent campaign of defending women's rights to speak and to be heard on this issue. So hats off to Councillor Louise Elliott. We're so glad that she's here. We've got a growing number of elected members in Australia at local government level and state government level and even federal government level. I really look forward to the day when we've got an elected members alliance in this country that is constituted of people brave enough to actually put their face out there, that we really have to redress this imbalance and the silencing and censorship of women, parents, and everybody who wants to speak out on these issues.